Welcome back to Reason for Truth. I'm your host, Stevie Garofalo. Welcome back to part 2 of Listen. He who is rich in friends has less troubles. We already covered part 1. Now we're going to cover part 2. The Italian proverb goes like this, and there's a Sicilian version, and then there's the Northern Italian version. Sicilian version can actually be many different dialects, but the Northern Italian is spoken up in Rome and North and more in the business sector. They like to see themselves as sophisticated. There's different, like proper English versus some different dialogues, like being in the South of the United States or being in Louisiana, they speak different than they do in Texas, right? Kind of like that, all right? It goes like this, amici a me, in the Sicilian goes like this, amici a me no problemi, okay? Which is Sicilian, again, for he who is rich in friends has less troubles, okay? You're going down to the mainstream Italian, or I should say the standard, the more correct, or not correct, but the formal Italian. It's going to say, cari amici a meno problemi, which is Italian Sicilian wisdom for saying friends make life easier. That's really what it's saying. Friends make life easier. Italian proverbs are like that. I know, man. My dad's from Italy. My mom, she's all Sicilian. Her parent family's from Sicily as well, or Italy. And listen, what they're saying, that those who choose the selfish pursuit of riches over the pursuit of developing true friendships and companionship have more troubles in life. So in contrast, developing true friends makes life easier and more enjoyable. And in the end, friends make life easier and certainly more enjoyable. This is part 2 of our 2-part series on the ancient Italian proverbs, which tells us life is easier with friends than without. And in this episode, we're going to pick it back up from last week. Remember, we had 6 points last week. We did 1. We're going to cover the other 5 today, showing that the value of true companionship and authentic friendship is being much more important than the pursuit of riches, which often gets in the way. Greetings, everyone. I'm your host, Stephen Garofalo. Welcome to Reason for Truth, where the truth comes first and the reasons come last, but where we're always and constantly learning, because when we stop learning, we stop teaching, or at least stop teaching well. Here we help you cut through the fog of culture's distorted truth, man, because that's all too prevalent. Because in our relative world, the truth doesn't change, but the human will to distort it never does. It never rests. We cut through the distortion of current events with the truth of God as an antidote to the false messages of this sinful world. Now, before we get started, make sure you just go ahead and smash that alert, that subscribe button, and give the old Gancio Sinistro, which is left hook in Italian, man, to that subscribe bell. Listen, Godfather may come out and say, listen here, make sure you do that. Or it could bring you something good to eat. I always tell you that. There's a lot of food on the menu in the Italians, and it's always very good. In Italy, they don't do with this GMO stuff and all the junk you see inside the food. It's all fresh. That's a beautiful thing. Now, today's proverb we're talking about says, he who is rich in friends has less troubles, or more plainly said, life is easier with friends. And I believe this proverb comes straight out of the pages of the Bible regarding the value of true friendship and authentic friendship as being more important than the pursuit of riches. King Solomon speaks to this. He was the wisest, most wealthy man ever to live. In Ecclesiastes 4, he says, 2 are better than 1 because together they can produce a better return in business. Together they can help one another when one falls or one fails. Listen, true friendship means someone has your back there in tough situations. Solomon says that he pities anybody who has chosen the pursuit of riches over friendships because, as the ancient Italian proverb says, life is easier with friends. So that means they have it harder without friends. And it's inverse. It means that material wealth and riches, often void of authentic friendship, make life very difficult. And again, these key 6 takeaways, we're going to jump right in with the second 5. We already covered the 1. And again, the truth is that chiari cori amici a meno problemi, which means friends make life easier. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Starting with part 2 is that friends don't forsake or withhold another friend's, friendship or the truth, because it invokes judgment of God. Job 6:14 says, he who withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. Verses 14 to 17 make clear that when a man is in despair, verse 26, that his friends, as Job felt, right? The book of Job, Job, ought to be loyal. Job never, through his pain, never stopped fearing God, the Almighty. You could see that in chapter 5, verse 17. But even if he had, he would still need companionship. The analogy here with Job gives us this truth, that his friends had been they were like a riverbed. In a rainy season, a wadi, W-A-D-I, meaning riverbed. It's filled, a wadi was always filled with rushing water from melting snow from the mountaintop. But in the summer, when things thinned out and you most needed that refreshing water to be clean and to live, it ended up drying up. So Job's friends were like a wadi. But he most needed them, right? The dead of summer. They disappointed him in that they deserted him. Verse 21. Verse 14 seems to be transitional hinge linking Job's despair as expressed in verses 8 to 13 with his disappointment in his friends. We don't want to be that. We really don't. We want to make sure when our friends are dry that we don't say, man, they're kind of weak. I'm just going to go ahead and let them fend for them. They're kind of weak. Are they really, what's going on here? Pick it up. Pull your straps up. Now, zooming out a little bit, slightly different lens, looking at verse 14 in particular, it shows you a larger passage encapsulated here with what Solomon's saying in verses 14 to 30. Job used the important Hebrew word translated kindness, talking about really loyal love of kindness, the kind of loyal love and faithfulness God shows his people to describe the kind of response he expected from his friend. Aha, friend. Remember, life is made easier with friendship. This leads us back to the Italian Sicilian proverb, Ciel derico di amici a me hanno problemi, which again means he who's rich in friends has less troubles. All right? Don't want to be jumping and drowning them. By the same token, you want to make sure we're there. And if you need be, sometimes some people do need a shoulder to lean on. That's a good thing, because sometimes we need a shoulder to lean on as well, meaning that friends should make life easier. Here in Job's case, his friends did not make life easier for him, and that when Job needed his friends most, man, they just weren't there. They were like a wadi, like a dried out desert. When he needed them most, it just wasn't there. No fresh stream of cool water to help him, speaking, figuratively. So let's make sure that we emulate Job and not his friends with our friendship, because friendship, should and will make life easy if we choose the right friends, okay, and the right biblical concepts to really truly live our life as. The third point is that, listen, true friendship builds up their friends, and it doesn't tear them down. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, therefore encourage one another, build one another up, just as you are doing. That beautiful thing, at least just as you were doing. How often, even within the church, we go backbiting, selfish ambition, gossiping in the name of what? Constructive criticism. Well, that person's really not good. We got to get the word out there. I had a guy I used to work with at my church, and there was an issue with something going along with the pastor. And he told me, we have to make sure we get this done. That's not the way the church handles things. That's handled within the elders and with the members of the church in closing, not behind the scenes, trying to, very bad, biblically destroyed my friendship with this man. And at the end of the day, it really turned out to be something that, not with the pastor, but with the guy. I'd be like, listen, man, you got a real deficiency in your character. You've been through seminary. You've been walking with the Lord for decades. You need to know better. You're really coming after, whether something with the pastor or not, you're not supposed to be doing that. Now all of a sudden the shift of the focus changes, right? Ephesians 4:29 says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only such that is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear it. Proverbs 11:13 says, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps the thing covered. All of us make mistakes, by the way, folks, and slip up with our tongue on occasion, but this ought not happen between good friends. It really shouldn't. This leads us to our fourth point, which is that a good friend overlooks an offense, but one who keeps offending his friend ruins a friendship. Proverbs 17:9 says, whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. We need to have grace on our brothers and sisters in Christ. But when a brother and sister continues to betray our trust and offend us, that friendship ultimately gets stretched, and it breaks apart. This is what happens. As my mother taught me growing up, again, remember Italian proverbs? She says, you can't fix a broken vase, Stephen. In other words, when you truly betray another person, that friendship is very deeply, and it's in most cases fractured. And listen, you can't put the vase back together. It's not that you can't restore that friendship, but that often, if you do, it takes consistent love. It takes a lot of time, usually years, a lot of prayer, and doing the right things so you can build that trust, because you've broken that trust. And the fifth point tells us this: a good friend is one that you can go to even when family won't receive you. See, Proverbs 27:10 says, do not forsake your friend and your father's friend. Do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. Now, this proverb is a continuation of lessons about friendships. It has 3 lines, which is rather unusual, by the way, in Proverbs. They usually don't do that. And with the 3rd line, clarifying what the first 2 are saying. It states that a friend who is a near neighbor is better than a brother who lives far away, presumably because friends, listen, they're more available at the time. If you get somebody, especially in those days, you didn't have planes and trains and airplanes, cars and whatnot. So listen, if you had to, go to a good friend versus try to go a long way to a family member. The closeness of friends and distance and relatives could be either, by the way, spatial or emotional in terms of distance, or could just be, hey, I get along, I can depend more on my friend than I can even my family. That happens, especially within the body of Christ. And listen, that's why it's important, right? Your life is easier when you have friends, okay? So cultivate those friends, those friendships. Make sure you don't forsake them. Keep those relationships strong. But also, this proverb speaking to relationships with personal, relationships and family and friends, rather than we really rely on distant relatives to help in difficult times. We need those friends. Thus, while it is true that a brother is born for adversity, that's chapter 17, verse 17, there are friends who stick closer than a brother. Chapter 18:24, and basically that sometimes it's more prudent to depend exclusively on relatives. And this leads us to the 6th and the last or final point, was simply that there is a big difference between a friend and an acquaintance. My mom used to tell me this all the time. Let's not confuse the two. She said, Stephen, you don't have a lot of friends. She wouldn't say you didn't have a lot of friends. You got a lot of acquaintances, but your friends are always far and few between. Those are the people you really can count on. Those are the people who you have a lot of mileage with, who've never turned their back on you. Okay, you can't have that many friends or so-called friends. True friendship develops over years and stands the test of time with unbroken loyalty and love. A hallmark of true friendship is that a true friend will not sometimes, but always be there. When we take on what we consider too many friends, listen, you know what happens? We destroy the concept of true friendship, and to our own detriment, by the way. Proverbs 18:24 says this: a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. If a person has many companions or numerous friends chosen indiscriminately, he might find himself in trouble, folks. Literally saying, be broken into pieces. This is a word play on the Hebrew word for companion, which is re'eh, R-E apostrophe E-H. And the word for break into pieces comes to ruin is ra'ah, R-A apostrophe, and then A. In other words, it's better to have a true friend, literally one who loves, than many less reliable companions. The choice of one's friends shapes one's life. See that in chapter 12:26 and 13, chapter 13, verse 20. If a man only makes casual friendships, that's not good. It will bring him only to ruin, because his gaggle of fair-weathered friends will let him down at different times and in difficult times. Remember, listen, a true friendship is one who sticks closer than a brother. You can have too many friends, but it's wise to cultivate the latter. So at the end of the day, you just don't want too many friends, or try to think you have too many friends, because then you don't really have friends. You only have a handful of friends. Anybody only has a handful of friends throughout life. In closing, let's remember, listen, first, a friend who forsakes or withholds love and help to another friend invokes the judgment of God. That's number one. Number two, true friendship builds their friends up, and it doesn't tear them down. Third, a good friend overlooks an offense, but one who keeps offending his friend ruins a friendship. Fourth, a good friend is one who can go to you can go there even when a family member won't receive you. And fifth, there's a big difference between a good friend and an acquaintance. We're not to confuse the two. We can't have too many friends. It doesn't work that way. We can have a lot of acquaintances. We can only have a handful of friends. Listen, at the end of the day, throughout our truth text here in Ecclesiastes, there's an emphasis on the obvious benefits of companionship. The intimacy and sharing of life brings relief for the problem of isolation and loneliness. A companion can offer assistance, comfort, and even a defense to help, right? Solomon uses the word threefold cord as a proverbial saying to this cliche, right, or to clinch his case about the value of friends and friendship. Let's enter in each day with this ancient Italian wisdom, because it's true. C'è ricco di amici, a meno problemi. right? Chiedi codi a mi che ha meno problemi. Or he who is rich in friends has less troubles, meaning life will be easier with friends. Please leave your comments below. Promise to get back to you in a very reasonable amount of time. If you want a more in-depth training, go ahead and hit our online training center at equippedacademy.com. If you feel led to, you want to help support this channel, the best way is support Reason for Truth, who produces this channel. You can do that at reasonfortruth.org, reasonfortruth.bible. Just hit the donate button. Appreciate you considering that. Listen, we just uploaded another episode here. You may want to check that out. It was covering part 1 of your lesson on friendship and this Italian proverb. This is part 2. I'm going to put a link to part 1 down below. Make sure on your way out, do a few things. Keep all your friends in prayer. Let them know that you love them. Make sure you do a couple things, man. You smash that subscribe button. Bam! And then you go ahead and left hook. You know what that is? Ganzillo di sinistro. I say that every week. The old Italian left hook on that alert bell down there. You know what happened? Carmine, he came out. He's not going to pop you. He's virtual. He'll bring you something to eat at best. You'll at least sit down and they maybe do what they do in Italy. Sit for 2 or 3 hours. And well, you may say, Steve, I don't have 2 or 3 hours. All right, it's virtual. All right, so just hang in there with me. But it's nice to have him come out virtually in your mind and help you out. I'm just telling you, it's a loving thing. Go ahead. Listen. Hit that alert bell after you subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you for your next episode for Reason for Truth. I'm your host, Stephen Garofalo, and this is your Reason for Truth for today.